we're gonna start off by talking a bit about the story of citizens and the city in ecological transition, which is essentially the project that Urboteca and the Association for Urban Transition have been running for the last couple of years. And this will be primarily presented by Vera from ATU, and we're also gonna take you through basically the history of the community and a bit on the activities that we've been doing over the last year. We'll then pass it on to Doina from Atelier d'Architectură Autogérée, who's gonna talk to us a bit more about the ecological transition as a movement, how it's been coming around in France, as well as how Atelier d'Architectură Autogérée has been helping grow this movement in France and the projects they've contributed with. Once we have that really nice setup and context around the movement for us, we're then gonna start diving a bit deeper into how you actually can bring initiatives to life within this movement. And here we have the lovely 4 speakers who are gonna join us from both Romania and France with case studies. We're gonna start with Ecopolis from Romania, who are gonna talk to us about the how you can mobilize the community, the public and private partners to run a project on air quality in Bucharest. We're then gonna hear from La Preuve Parcet from France on their project around architecture, urbanism, and policy in the ecological transition. We're gonna pass it on to Roxana from Micile Bucurii, who's gonna talk to us about sustainability and how you can run projects for education for sustainability with local communities. And finally, we're gonna wrap up the presentations with Etienne from Jablonska on active pedagogy with neighborhood communities. And hopefully by the end of the 4 presentations, you've learned a lot and you have questions. And we're gonna discuss together in the panel discussion at the end a bit about the opportunities and the challenges around the ecological transition movement, what we've learned as methods that might be really interesting for you to take forward in your initiatives or your projects, as well as doing a bit of reflection on any other questions that you might have arising from the presentation so far. So this is the plan for today. We hope that it's going to be quite a fun and really knowledge-packed session. And yeah, I'm going to pass it on to Vera to get started.
So yes, the story of citizens and the city in ecological transition. It started before the pandemics. You can switch to the next slide, or I can. Yes, okay. So it started with a workshop that was initiated by Studio Bazar, an NGO from Bucharest, and the Association for Urban Transition, with the support of the Order of Architects in Bucharest branch. And we had, for this first meeting that was going on 2 years ago already, three major topics about what would be more participative governance, how do we define here in Romania with the stakeholders what ecology is, and also in relationship to urban commons. So it was a working session. And we had presentations like today, and it was, for me, it was a moment of hope, because I saw among the participants many colleagues, many architects who want to do more for the built environment, for the ecological, more ecological built environment, but also people from the recently established civic initiative groups, and that was a meeting in which we have seen people wearing double hats in the same time, like the professional hat, but also the civic engagement hat. Following the next moment, the next important moment was few months later, just before the pandemic started, and we could meet again in the same place, this time with less presentations and more teamwork on various topics. So we started by defining into more detail the basic notions that would transform afterwards into the 10 principles of this network in Romania. So we had the occasion to be invited in the Biennale of Timișoara in autumn the same year, and even though it was more difficult to gather many people in one place, we have gathered our principles from the previous meetings, and we have presented them in a format, and we have started already to invite people to add their experience, so that this idea of mapping and collecting and putting together things, as Diana will explain later on, had already started at that point. It was a special edition of the Timișoara Biennale of Architecture, and we found ourselves presented there together with various other workshops and of course architectural interventions. They all sharing this responsibility, the responsibility towards the planet, towards the built environment, towards the communities. And I want to present briefly the 10 ideas, the 10 main ideas that were also shown in the Biennale, because I guess that I think that they are also presented in English on this website here, together with the mapping that Diana will show. And we have defined these 10 principles, and I will briefly pass to speak a few words about each and every one of them. They are 10, they are many, but I will just say a few words. And if you want to go into more detail, we could have later on a discussion in relationship to these principles. It's we started with the workshop that brought us together. It is a workshop in which Atelier d'Architecture Autogérée has presented Rurban, and that was like a trigger for us to realize that it is very important to have places in which there are demonstrations of all these principles, and places where people can learn from each other and do concrete hands-on activities in applying all these principles of ecological transition. We move to the next one. Then we have talked about the importance of knowledge about ecological transition, but also education and training for more awareness. And we shall see in the next case studies that this is an important aspect of many initiatives. So we refer to this importance of knowledge that must be produced and used. Not only for we are not thinking only of children education, but education and training for public institutions, for businesses, for civic groups, and also for experts. So we move on. Also, we have considered that it is very important to have recognition for people who have a strong sense of belonging and of triggering collective action with other inhabitants, and this to have recognition and to encourage more bottom-up initiatives. We move on. Another idea was that we really need to consider processes of decision making for ecological transition, processes that should be participatory, and again, we shall see in the examples that we will have presented later on that this is a very important aspect, because we are talking about decisions about common resources. We consider that planet is a common resource, so decisions must be taken in a participative manner. Okay. Here we had the importance of knowledge, of networks, connecting the dots. It's important to have the group of neighbors, activists, scientists, leaders from all society sectors who care about ecology, to have occasions to know each other and to communicate to each other and to build trust among the various groups of stakeholders in our cities. Okay. We have also talked a lot about, well, there is a particular case in Romania in which, even though you have people who have a very solid background in urban planning or architecture, and they know a great deal of things about technicalities, but maybe they know a bit less about processes and about the roles of stakeholders and about the importance of community cohesion. So we have this division of disciplines in Romania, and also we have a bit of, we need to have more trust from the decision makers towards the professionals, and basically we need to work a lot about evidence-based policies and programs, not just decisions that are taken overnight. And this idea of more input from experts in the processes for planning and for investing public resources is very much needed in our country. So this is the professionalism we are talking about here, but we shall also see tonight that we have examples in France of collective, of groups of professionals who dedicate their knowledge and who go towards neighborhood communities in order to work together. And this, for the moment, in Romania is not so common, but hopefully more and more young professionals also in our country will be aware of the benefits and of the results that with professional knowledge we can contribute to ecological transition. Thank you. We move on. Of course, climate emergency, climate change should be like a filter for every public decision, no matter the political ideology. Unfortunately, priorities for climate change adaptation or mitigation are still very shy. You don't have these filters at work in the public decision processes, and about that maybe Juana will follow with a bit more details. So we want more awareness about climate change in all public decisions. Of course, communication is important, but for the dissemination of ecological practices, for the sharing of good examples, but also for inventing new narratives in which individuals do not feel they are not scared or how to say that, brought to feel guilty about their way of life, but in a more constructive way, this new narrative in which each person could bring a contribution. Thank you. And we have also talked about ecological economy and the need for regulations for responsible economic agents and for encouraging economic models that are adapted to climate change. Okay, so let's go a bit faster because this was supposed to be for 10 minutes, and if we spend 1 minute per principle, we are already there. It's about the just city, so urban equity in terms of equitable distribution and universal access to public resources and to public facilities, especially in areas of the city where you find vulnerable groups. And also the diversity of communities who are supposed to participate in the construction of inclusive and sustainable society. Okay, so here we go to Diana to speak about what happened after we have decided upon these 10 principles, we have presented them, and we have launched the invitation for other people to join the network and to present their practice and their beliefs. You go on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Vera. So yeah, as you could see, there was quite a lot that happened up till 2020. And then I think with the launch of the principles, we then had to think about, okay, how can we actually bring these principles a lot more into practice rather than just having them on a website and just kind of putting them together, actually being able to have a look at how this could be brought to life. So essentially the project Citizens in the City in Ecological Transition then continued in 2020 with more of an online community, and with the support of the French Embassy in Romania and the French Institute, we were able to lay out a few key activities over the last year. One of them was mapping the initiatives that actually respond to ecological urgency and the need for change through direct action. So really seeing which are the initiatives who are doing work in the space of ecological transition in Romania, being able to create a map for project awareness and actually for the awareness of the full movement at a national scale, and then opening up the dialogue and finding that space for common action to support systemic change in the future. So we essentially started in March, April this year with a survey that we ran online, where we were able to uncover over 50 initiatives in Romania that basically address the challenges of ecological transition and also were aligned to some of the principles that Vera presented. And on top of that, during additional online research, we mapped a further 100 of them from Romania. So at the moment, what happens is that you can actually visit this map of the initiatives within ecological transition movement on our website on cote.org. We'll put the link in the chat as well. And there you can actually have a look at what some of these initiatives are, what their expertise areas, what expertise area they have, how much of an impact on like a local versus a national scale they have, as well as being able to play a bit and uncover some of the details around them. The survey actually that we launched when we were trying to do the mapping was actually a really useful one for us to be able to understand a bit what's the temperature around ecological transition as a community for the movement at a national scale. And while we found plenty of initiatives, the main takeaway that we got was that actually within themselves, initiatives weren't actually that familiarized with each other. So there wasn't much of a sense of community. However, what came out of the survey was that indeed there were loads of really interesting need areas for the people and the kind of the actors playing in this space. Among them, and apologies, this is in Romanian, among them we had finance as a key need that people needed more knowledge around, the need of like being able to have that know-how transfer, so between initiatives already set up versus newer ones. being able to work and connect with other networks so that they could learn from each other. A big part as well, infrastructure, so having the logistical and the resourcing power to be able to unpack and actually do their activity. And finally, also the legislative context of actually having authorities collaborate on issues to do with the climate emergency. So off the back of the survey, we also organized a meeting a couple of months ago where we started to bring together some of the actors. And what we're now trying to do is move towards a space where we could bring more people together in the online community, and hoping that by starting some of these events, we're able to address some of the needs that we uncovered throughout the survey. But obviously, at the Romanian scale, as Vera was saying, we're still quite new to this. And the purpose of this event actually is to be able to look at France and see how the movement of ecological transition has been developing there over the last few years, and be able to learn some of the methods, some of the ways of working that we're seeing there, to be able to hopefully find inspiration for Romania as well. I'm gonna invite Doina from Atelier d'Architecture Autogérée to join us now. Doina, if you can unmute yourself just to make sure that we have you. Yeah.
Okay. Amazing. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me well? Yeah. I'm very pleased to be again together and to see the platform at another stage. As Vera has mentioned, with Atelier d'Architecture Autogérée, we were amongst the initiators of this platform, and we are very positively impressed by the fact that somehow it took on and then it has developed, it continues, and it grows, and this is very encouraging. I don't know, I think there is a lot to learn from this on the French side, where also we speak a lot about ecological transition. Perhaps we do not have yet such a platform. I mean, there are a number of initiatives that are not connected yet, and probably this is something that we have to do as well in France. So maybe a few words about ecological transition. Transition, as you know, consists in this implementation of sustainable development and strategies of resilience at different levels, and this is because in the face of the ecological crisis that we are encountering, which is a long-term crisis, probably a new condition, with climate change and depletion of natural resources. We need to develop alternatives to ensure the resilience of our society. And knowing that these phenomena are, many of them, irreversible, and we don't know and we won't be able to change them, we need to learn how to adapt and to potentially transform ourselves as a society. In addition to sustainability, also we need to speak more and to learn how to be more resilient. We know that many of the ecological transition programs are now implemented through top-down government policies and frameworks, and there are a lot of changes. I don't know, I mean, this is, in France it is the case, I don't know how much is in Romania, probably at a certain kind of level, yes, because at least these are imposed by Europe. So there are changes, restrictions, shifts, regulations also in many aspects of economic and social life. But the question is that, is it enough to have this just change in policy? Because is this quickly and efficient enough to arrive, I would say, to the level of the ordinary citizen? And because many changes need to take place at the level of our everyday life, with our modes of consumption and living, we think, and I'm expressing here the position of Atelier d'Architecture Autogérée, we think that this transition cannot be done without the involvement of citizens. And I think citizens are, in this approach to ecological transition, the key element. AAA, Atelier d'Architecture Autogérée, is known as a pioneer of participatory approach in architecture, and we have done this since 2001. We have at the beginning facilitated the citizen right to the city. Now we speak a lot about the right to resilience as well, by enabling access to spaces that are self-managed by the citizen and where they can develop, I would say, resilient activities collectively. So we have done a series of projects since 2001, and they became more and more complex in Paris and also in the Parisian region. And with this tendency to scale out and scale up, local projects by multiplying the model, by connecting them also to form platforms, to form networks and clusters. And since 2000, there were also other practices that have emerged, in the field of participatory architecture and urban planning. Many of them were concerned, like us, with social and ecological aspects. And maybe this is a characteristic of the French approach, the fact that this collective practice, professional practice, has little by little created a sort of movement, the movement, le mouvement des collectifs. It is an approach that put forward a model for young architects who now choose to work in this way, rather than joining big practices and kind of working for commercial projects. And this model promotes another professional value or values and other priorities, and also probably another mode of implication, which is more engaged and also more long-term, I would say. So the architect is not only the one that is drawing the project, is the one that is sometime initiating it, implement it, and kind of become also a counselor and a facilitator on behalf of the community. If it's possible to run, I wanted to run a small film that speaks about our last project, which is one of these long-term projects, which is a strategy of resilience called Urban. Maybe I'm shutting down.
Oh, shall I play it? Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Our society consumes today the resources of 3 planets, creating major climate and biosphere disturbance. To save our planet, we need to change our ways of living and producing. We need to become more resilient. I'm Doina Petrescu, professor of architecture at the University of Sheffield, and together with international researchers, practitioners and policymakers, we have developed Urban, which is a co-produced strategy of urban resilience. Urban is about urban resilience and about how citizens can act together to save the planet by changing their ways of working and living in their neighborhoods. The strategy is based on setting up local resilience hubs which provide physical infrastructure for resilience practices and civic stakeholders. These practices around urban agriculture, water management, energy production, waste recycling create social, economic and environmental benefits in the neighborhood. Organized as an expanding network, the hubs support the emergence of local circular ecologies and economies at the city and regional levels.
Rurban a été initié par l'Atelier d'architecture Autogérée en 2008, en collaboration avec de multiples partenaires, des chercheurs, des collectivités, des décideurs. Ces hubs urbains ont été développés dans la région parisienne et à Londres. Après avoir réalisé 2 hubs à Colombes en 2013, nous avons ouvert une nouvelle agrocité à Gennevilliers en 2018 et nous réalisons actuellement une agrocité et un recyclable à Bagneux.
À Gennevilliers, il y a maintenant 252 adhérents avec une énergie folle, des profils totalement différents pour créer quelque chose qui va être un lieu d'apprentissage, de transmission autour de l'écologie, le recyclage et commencer à vivre différemment.
Je découvre qu'on peut faire des choses formidables pour la planète et c'est super parce qu'on est beaucoup à apprendre, à s'enrichir ici et à pouvoir les retransmettre ensuite.
J'apprends au fil du temps à travailler en collectif, au service de la nature. Ça m'apprend tout ça, j'apprends beaucoup de choses.
L'agrocité représente la dynamique dans laquelle la ville souhaite repenser le quartier, notamment sur des aspects vraiment axés sur le développement durable.
Et ça peut être un modèle qu'on pourrait bien sûr reproduire dans d'autres quartiers.
Le territorial, c'est peut-être la réinvention de la politique. Mais cette réinvention, elle peut se faire qu'avec les citoyens. Ça, je partage totalement ce cœur de l'aire urbaine.
Since 2014, Rurban has been implemented in East London by Public Works. 2 hubs have been built in Hackney Week as part of the Olympic legacy and in Poplar neighborhood in partnership with Poplar Harca Housing Association. The hubs have developed circular economies around food growing and processing, organic waste and community energy production, devices repair and air purification.
The idea of being able to bring that model around utilising sustainability and sustainability practice within established communities was really interesting. We're focusing a lot on air quality within our work in the team at the moment, and the urban work has been a really crucial part of that. To really engaging with people, whether that's about planting or prototyping moss walls or about thinking about food waste very differently.
Urban can help to galvanise this sort of creative and possibly entrepreneurial spirit in the community by giving them opportunities to try out new things, new skills, and giving them a hub where they can kind of gather and a way to network with other like-minded people.
Urban has helped me to be more ambitious in thinking about ways that local residents can engage with scientifically supported practices within sustainability.
Urban has been used more and more as a reference projects, either in academic work but also in new pitches, say for the mayor, where it becomes a kind of best practice example to be replicated.
Since the first hub's implementation in 2013, Rurban generated an impressive ecological, economic and social impact. The project has gained wide international recognition, receiving a number of prestigious awards, and has influenced policymakers and funding bodies to support similar developments at larger scales.
Je pense que les pratiques urbaines en question de gouvernance, elles peuvent être reproduites à des plus grandes échelles. Nouvelle gouvernance participative, remettre le citoyen au centre de la démarche, réfléchir sur la question des usagers. Je pense que c'est vraiment des choses aussi où Rurban fait partie des pionniers un petit peu de réflexion sur ces questions-là.
Rurban a apporté à la ville de Bagneux la possibilité de travailler en réseau, aussi bien en local avec différents acteurs, et puis bien sûr au sein de la région Île-de-France.
La Fondation Terre Solidaire soutient des projets en Afrique par exemple, et se pose la question de comment articuler la lutte contre la pauvreté, le développement de l'économie et aussi la question écologique. Et Rurban, c'est un bon exemple d'une articulation.
Rurban, ça a un impact aussi sur la vision de la ville et sur la vision de ce que l'on construit dans la ville. Je pense que ces expériences à l'échelle locale permettent de changer des façons de penser et de vivre au concret et que ça pourra nous permettre de mieux vivre demain.
Okay. Thank you. I think we can stop the sharing. So this is a film which is centered a little bit on the impact that such an approach can have, and I think it's very important to speak about and to be able to communicate about the multiple values that such an approach promotes. And in our case, this was very important in the negotiation of land in the city, but also about the fact that it can be really co-produced, and it can be a united effort between many kind of stakeholders. So everyone can have a place and can have an interest, from policymakers, developers, funders, to the ordinary citizen. And maybe this is something that I would like to put forward and maybe discuss further. And also there is this issue of scale, how to pass from small practices to more and I would say more important and more impactful movements, platforms that can really promote this change of value at all levels. So I will stop here. Maybe it's enough to, and I'm very curious to hear and to see other practices.
Thank you, Doina. We're gonna continue with the presentations now. I'm gonna pass it on to Vera to introduce some of our speakers, and then we'll get at the end to the questions and hopefully being able to go more into detail in what Doina has presented as well, if you have any observations. In the meantime, please do use the chat to land any questions, any thoughts, anything. We're gonna try and have a look and obviously answer all throughout and pick it up at the end.
Okay, so I want to introduce Oana Nenechu from Ecopolis, and we go back, we know each other, we have been together in a platform that was called Platform for Bucharest more than a decade ago. And Ecopolis was a partner since the very beginning of this platform. The platform had unexpected results. We were thinking of influencing public policies for more sustainable development of the capital city of Romania, Bucharest. And basically, that was the starting point of a political ambition of some people who are now in decision-making positions. We can tell this story another time, but right now, we want to hear from the Resource Center for Sustainable Policies, which is the long title of Ecopolis, and from Oana, about their experience. And also, I want to introduce to you the fact that they are doing a very, very important job in advocacy, in influencing legislation, in ensuring that there are participatory processes in defining legal frames. And these participatory processes bring on the table concerns of the people for concrete solutions. And they also are very involved with campaigns for education and building awareness. So Oana, I hope that my presentation is
Thank you, Vera.
Is a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's a bit hard to follow Doina after that great presentation on our urban. I didn't know of the project and I was amazed by it. Would be great to have that kind of initiatives in Romania, but unfortunately we are pretty not in that point. So I'll share my screen with my presentation. But first, okay. So I'm gonna talk tonight about our campaigns on air quality in Bucharest. Ecopolis deals with this problem that we have in Bucharest for over 10 years. We had the first study in 2011, the first study that linked data on air quality with data on public health issues. This is a study that wasn't made by authorities in Romania, never made by authorities in Romania. So it was a pioneering work. And now we have some campaigns that I'd like to talk to you about. So in 2019, Ecopolis and other partners, because we also have partners, created Air Life, which is an independent air quality monitoring platform in Bucharest. We had from the very beginning 3 purposes. We wanted to engage citizens in a collaborative platform for citizen science for them to adopt these sensors of air monitoring and to take care of them and to see the data. Then we wanted to determine authorities to act on air quality now, because we are in a very bad situation. We have like 6 infringements on air quality, and Bucharest is one of the most polluted city in Europe. And then we wanted to raise awareness on the issue, on all issues related to air quality in Bucharest. And once we put in place the network of sensors, it was clear that we had that we deal with the phenomenon that we didn't know of by then, which is the burning of waste and different materials in the outskirts of Bucharest. This is an illegal activity, as you can imagine. It is forbidden to burn any type of waste in Romania. However, the Inspectorate of Urgent Situations in Bucharest reports over 130 field interventions on incineration of waste for last year. Reports come more and more often from the citizens. And the police reported 474 notifications during 4 years. So there was a problem, a real problem, and we decided to create a separate campaign that is called IRS. It translates burnt air, like burning air, something like that in Romanian, which is a campaign that we are currently on. It means an online platform for informing citizens. Just a second, because I don't. Okay, and to give the citizens a tool to notice, to put forward what they see around them for authorities to see also. We had a seminar on this issue organized at the Romanian Parliament like 2 weeks ago, where we discussed and we presented the situation to authorities. We have a media campaign on the issue, and we will make public a report on this issue, because, as I said before, it is not a documented phenomenon, so nobody knows anything about this. It's like non-existing. And now I'm gonna share with you a short video, because I want you to see what we are dealing with exactly. Sorry. Sorry. I don't know why this happened. Can you hear me? Okay. So that is basically the the idea. You've seen it. It's like near Bucharest in all Ilfov County. It's a generalized practice to burn this kind of waste from cars, from constructions, anything, from tires, from cars, and also medical waste they found on these fields near Bucharest. And this affects the air we breathe, obviously. Now I'm going to talk to you a bit about results, because we have some. In 2 years of campaigning, we managed to contest and win in court the integrated plan for air quality of Bucharest. This was a really poorly built and managed plan that we wanted to contest. We had these partners, lots of NGOs basically. We gathered and took the municipality to court with the help of Client Earth organization, which is a very big organization at the European level that deals with this kind of problems with environmental issues in court. Then we managed to put the air quality on the public agenda. We have like weekly appearances in media and in the main TV news. We work with a team of MPs, of members of parliament and experts on a new air quality project, legislative project. And we want to have open data on air quality, monitoring new pollutants, because we have problems in Bucharest with black carbon, with sulfurate hydrogen. We promoted and passed, we managed to pass a law on banning the purchase of metal that is obtained through burning. So it will be probably a law that will stop, I think, maybe this phenomenon of burning stuff for metal or for other materials. Now, because I have to end in an optimistic mode, I'm going to talk to you about the Lake Mori initiative, which is a bit different. It's like a solution for this issue on air quality. And the solution would be to create a very large park or a very large, I don't know, forest, or maybe anything with green space in it on the lake, near Lake Mori area. It has like 270 hectares and could be the largest natural urban park in Bucharest. It is an area now covered in waste also, but also an area that is home to 130 species of birds, 11 species of fish, 2 species of amphibians, 7 of reptiles, and 6 of mammals. So it's a very, very rich area. We are trying to promote this idea to the local authorities and to the municipalities of Bucharest, local and a general one. And we built a public campaign a small one, I think, but maybe we will go bigger next year. We try to create events with citizens to make them aware of this area. And we had activities of cleaning the place, learning about the area, learning about the species in the area with the specialists, with experts. We had meetings with authorities, with Sectorul 6 municipality and the general municipality on this issue. And we are trying to find and create a framework for the administration of this future park, hopefully. We had a report on biodiversity of the area that we are trying to promote. And we work together with the Bucharest Natural Park, which is another park, very beautiful one in Bucharest. And in their network of urban natural areas, we are trying to, I don't know, find ways to create this amazing place that we are seeing in our heads now. And because Vera said, this is my presentation. So basically I tried to show you 3 ways of working with people and for them. And also I should say that next year we are starting a campaign on small communities in Bucharest, 3 communities. We are going to choose 3 communities in which we are going to monitor air quality, create a network of citizens that will really know the issue, and try to create together with them some local public policies for improving the situation they are in. This is another way that we thought we should try to engage citizens in these issues. And because Vera earlier said that about public policies and climate change, in my experience, I've basically think that there is no perspective about climate change in public decision making right now in Bucharest. I don't know of one, so maybe you know, and you'll tell me. It's not, I think basically in Romania, NGOs and civil society is much more active on these issues, all of the issues you talked about earlier. So maybe we should try push it harder on them. Thank you so much, and I expect your questions.
As Diana has announced in the beginning, we have after each presentation a bit of time for 1 or 2 questions. So now is the time. If not, then we can move on to the French perspective that would be represented now by Émilie Flamme. And she will speak about a marvelous combination of experimental architecture, urbanism, and policy, La Preuve par 7. And what is amazing about this initiative is that these experiments take place in various contexts. There is a village, a small town, a metropolitan area, a place which is overseas. And in all these places, the principle is to bring together different actors in order to go beyond the classic binom of elected official and built environment professional, and to make together design briefs and put to work this combination of experimental architecture and urbanism and public policies. So, Émilie, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Vera. I will now share my presentation. Let's see. Oh no. 1 moment. I'm having some technical difficulties. My system is not allowing me to share my desktop. One moment.
Shall I share it from my end? Would that be useful?
Yeah, that would be great. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
But as we're talking, I can start to just sort of present the project and reverberate on what you were saying. So La Preuve par 7 is, as Vera was mentioning, a multi-site project that was initiated by architect Patrick Bouchon. And it's a project that does really do this interesting combination of working through questions of scale while also really trying to focus on a very particular context. So each of the projects that we have really is built out of what we could identify sort of as a local need. So what's interesting is much of what Doina was talking about in terms of AAA's strategy, I think really matches on to the way that La Preuve par 7 has sort of adapted a strategy. One particularity of La Preuve par 7 is that it's a fairly new project. It's from 2018. It has antecedents. It has a history a little bit beforehand, but for the most part, it's originated from 2018, and it's funded by multiple government entities. So we have the Minister of Culture, the Minister of Ecological Transition. We also have the Agency for the Cohesion of the Territories, as well as the Fondation France, which supports sort of citizen-led projects. And I've sort of left this map at the beginning because it was a map of the initial projects which we launched with, and one of the particular sort of things to understand about this project is that we are both trying to do the work of on the ground continuity, so having somebody present, creating these networks that Doina is mentioning, this sort of action-based network, while also being in constant conversation with our funders who are the actual national government. So if you wouldn't mind, Vera, going to the next slide, that would be great. So part of this is to come out of the elected official developer tendency that happens in France. So in urban planning, we tend to see this dynamic, and I'm going to cut quickly to some more concrete examples, but the way that we've really tried to integrate our strategy is to have relationships that are actually developed through contracts with elected officials, maybe developers, depending on the size of the project, and civil society actors. And those civil society actors can be NGOs as much as they can be also citizens. They can be participants from different other projects. And I will go more into this as we go through the project. So if you could go to the next slide, that'd be great. One of the key methodologies that I really wanted to anchor on, and that has been sort of the methodology that I think is maybe not labeled as ecological, but one of the ways which the La Preuve par 7, I think, really marks itself along with other projects is through the architectural permanence, or the permanence architecturale. It's a project that, or it's a way of taking place, situating oneself in a project, and it comes from years of sort of experimenting through architecture, ways of inhabiting a project. This doesn't mean that a project like our project at La Preuve par 7, it doesn't mean that we inhabit a project all the time. It means that occasionally we will be on sort of attending the project more than the regular development project. So this really comes from architects going on the ground, meeting with local actors, creating networks, and trying to focus on how do we create an architecture and even an urban planning scheme that can be most beneficial to the local community. And part of why I think this is ecological and why La Preuve par 7 is relevant to this question of ecological transition is that you necessarily need time to be able to create a project that involves so many different people. So the trio of people who will be maybe concerned with the development of the city, the mayors, the elected officials, members of cabinets, and civil society, so citizens plus NGOs plus others, it takes time, it takes human relationships, it cannot be done overnight. And so it slows the decision-making process down to a certain extent. It doesn't necessarily mean that we can't achieve things, but what it does do is allow for the entire urban development project to take a more human scale sometimes. I think, especially in France, we see urbanization happening at rapid levels, and this sort of tendency will lead to projects that feel incredibly impersonal and sometimes don't seem to respond to the local population. And this was a general trend that we responded to, on top of the fact that we know that even if there is a need for housing and other services, architecture should respond to the local needs and not just a global, more higher up program. And this is sort of the conversations that we're trying to have between our local partners who are tending to the projects, and these relationships that we have higher up with the government who have their ears open. So if you could go to the next slide, Vera, that would be great. This is more for you to reference if you would be interested. It's kind of a manifest around the architectural permanence as a method. And it's something that a lot of young architects who have followed Patrick Bouchin, but not only, have sort of mobilized to have a sort of ethos in the way that they take on a project. I think we can go to the next slide. So I wanted to focus also on one key part of the way that we do the permanence architecturale, and it's based off of a history of projects. And one of the most preeminent ones in I would say France that we work from is l'Hôtel Pasteur, which is an old science faculty building from a university in Rennes, and it was rehabilitated over time and now has become sort of a staple of the city. I invite you to go look it up. I won't spend more time because I would like to talk about our current projects, but l'Hôtel Pasteur really informed how we think about rehabilitation of buildings and how we think about the architectural permanence. And so this particular project, the project called Lunel, it's in the city called Lunel, and it's in an old train station, which is actually currently owned by the SNCF and has been contracted to us for a certain amount of time to be able to rehabilitate it and utilize it. You can go to the next slide. This particular project is held by Mathilde Tourniol-Duclos. She's based in Montpellier, and she helps carry this project with other younger architects who are helping her make this ecosystem start to run. This is an earlier schema of how, or like schema, I'm in Frenglish today, around how the project functions. And again, it's this idea of working with people who are thinking about how the city should be evolving, which includes developers and elected officials, but also working with civil society members who will come in and really have more of an eye on what is needed in the local population. And part of what's happening in Lunel, which is particularly interesting, is that they're constantly thinking about how can this train station, this old train station that is no longer in use, have a new use, and how can we try to think over time its new uses while also giving the building a new life. So it's thinking about the building as itself, as a building that needs to be rehabilitated, but it's also thinking of the building as a structure that can take on a new life in 2021, and also participate in this sort of network building that Doina was showing even with AAA, where we think about networks, we think about connections to other institutions, organizations within the town. So if you could scroll to the next slide. So again, this is just an example of a small little rehabilitation that has been done, and it's while the project is still underway, but they've added tarps so that there can be a meeting space outside of the building to allow for seminars, public hearings just about how the building is evolving. And again, it's just thinking through this building step by step. And this is just one of our projects, but it's again on this topic of rehabilitation. Many of our projects at La Prof Parfaite treat other themes, but this is just one of them. And so continuing with that, Vera, if you could go to the next slide. Thank you. This is just sort of a way that we think about phasing, and it's a different, and the way that phasing is shown is it's between construction and permanence, which just means presence on site. And by just, I'm not minimizing it, but it is a question of just how do we create relationships between the local population, between builders, between even the public and private actors that are influencing how this building is going to take shape. And the idea is that we phase different parts of the building so that not all of the building is under construction at once, and the buildings sort of can take on new functions over time. This is just an example that isn't necessarily to date. It was an early phasing option, but it's to really think about how the building can take up different needs over time, and then by the end, maybe it's what it will serve will be completely different. I think we can go to the next slide. So the second project that I wanted to show is Billon. So Billon is in Auvergne, so it's in the center of France. It's a old Jesuit college from the it's much older. It's from about 1600, but it's been rehabilitated over time. And now it's back to a state where it really would need quite a bit of money. The difference between this particular building and the previous building is the previous building was private and this one is a public building. It's actually a historic monument, but it is in the center of Billon, which is a small town. And the question here is, well, we want to do a similar idea, but we would like to rehabilitate it, and we would like to give it a new life, but we're not necessarily sure how to give it a new life, because we need to figure out how the local population would need to assess their needs. And the thing is, this is a very, like Lunel, it's a small town. So figuring out how to rehabilitate such a large building into a public space, a space that is reusable, a space that can have office spaces, maybe medical offices, who knows, is difficult. And specifically with this idea of rehabilitating an old structure. And one of the things I just meant to raise with bringing up Billon, and I think we can go to the next page, is that this particular building in the question of like ecological transition poses some questions in terms of how do we think policy around ecological transition. And that's because older buildings, specifically in France, I don't know the case for Romania, they have many rules that limit the way in which we can reimagine a building's internal structure. And part of that is it's for the historical preservation, but it also means that sometimes some of the fixes that we could think of as the most pragmatic are not on the table, because historic preservation means that the strategies that are used to rehabilitate it are quite rigid, using specific materials, etc. And so one of the things that was sort of on the ecological transition side, and then one of the things in this project, it's quite dense, so I'm sorry for speaking very quickly, is that this project is also run by a local organization called Rural Combo. They're a collective of architects who are living in the area, who have projects going on sort of all around, and are also here to sort of weave links to the building, but also with local actors and public officials and private actors who may be interested, like private companies who might be interested in maybe renting out space or helping to rehabilitate it. I think we can go to the next slide. So again, here we see it's just another map of how we rethink space, not just around the building, or in the building, but also around the building. And part of this is also to allow people to also imagine the different kinds of spaces that can exist around this building. We can think about new ways of attributing uses, just from also giving people visuals that make them understand that there is a flexibility to how these spaces are being imagined. So part of this, what makes these projects really fascinating is, again, the amount of different levels of interaction that we have from projects that are happening on the ground and how they are manifesting, and then also how these projects then need to be communicated between higher policy levels. And me working for the Préfet, this is largely what I do. I would not say I carry the projects on the ground, but I'm constantly sort of negotiating between how we phase on the ground and how we negotiate politics upwards. So I'm happy to talk about those things in the question portion. I think we can scroll down. I included this photo. It was from an atelier that was held, I believe, in Bagneux. And again, it was interesting to see this presentation by AAA, because we also have projects in Bagneux and Gennevilliers, and the agrocités are a big part of the network of people that we're aware of and that we work with at different levels. And I really like this this little sheet, because it makes us think about what worlds we live in and what worlds we can also be imagining. And specifically with these projects, when we're thinking about on the ground work as well as policy thinking, it's constantly about how we imagine a future horizon for the kinds of projects that we're leading. I think we can go to the last slide. So overall, I wanted to just give a sort of overview of how La Preuve par 7 functions. We have about 7 projects across France, from Mayotte, which is an island off the coast in the Indian Ocean near Madagascar, and all the way into Lunel, which is in the south. We also have projects in Gennevilliers and Bagneux, Lunel, and Montjustin, which is in the Luberon. These projects are very diverse in the type of themes that they treat. Sometimes it is about ecological questions, and sometimes it's more about urban questions that are just about access to a school or other things. I'm really happy to talk about them. I'm speaking quickly because I feel like it's quite dense, but thank you again for listening. I really appreciate this time.
Perfect. Thank you, Emily. That was really interesting. I think in the interest of time, I'm gonna move on to the next presentation from Romania, and then please do use the chat. I'm just like reminding every time, if you have questions, thoughts, put them in the chat and we'll come back to them later in the discussion part. So let me, if I can actually do this. So our next speaker is Roxana from Micile Bucurii, which is an NGO from Romania, which I think actually translates as "would little joys make it do it justice" in Romanian, Roxana?
Yes, and I saw someone translated it in French, petit joyeux, sorry, my French is horrible, so something like this, yeah. So it's about the little things in life that reconnect us with nature. Let me share my screen, please.
As you share your screen, I'll just make a short intro. So yeah, your work is primarily in, well, it kind of started online really, but you're focusing on Romania and, as you're saying, bringing that connection between nature and the people at the core of it. And essentially, yeah, working through really interesting projects in the community, a lot being based around educating the public and bringing forward those environmental issues through practical workshops, through co-creation sessions, and really a lot of creativity, knowing the fact that I actually follow your work. So really curious to hear more from you.
Yes, so hello, thank you for having me. I'm Roxana. Yeah, the project started actually in July 2018 when I was home with my son. He was a little baby and I was just throwing a lot of garbage, and I started to really get concerned about the environment, and I started an online community. It's a Facebook group, Micile Bucurii, and in time the community grew a lot. At the moment we are 6,000 people just engaging daily in topics around sustainability. And during the time in between 2018 and 2020, this curiosity transformed in a passion, and a passion in a dedicated project, and I transformed the whole idea in an NGO. Our mission is to guide people to live in harmony with nature. I think one of the most important aspects when we speak about climate change is that people tend to feel like disconnected from nature. We consider ourselves on top of nature. It's our right to exploit nature, and this the discrepancy is leading us towards a climate disasters. I think that it's important to see the connection between, like, re-empower people to reconnect with nature, as I was saying, and to do things with their own hands. I think that it's important to go back to traditions, to think about, okay, maybe we can dye our clothes with natural with plants, or maybe we can make our bread at home rather than buying it from a supermarket. So as I was saying, starting 2018, I started with the community, And then through the community, I started to organize small workshops, small events, and also get-togethers in the digital environment. Then I started to see that, through the discussions, through the engaged discussions, when you speak about climate change, recycling is not the solution. And I was like, us Romanians are very behind in climate education, just to put it that way. And I was shocked when I myself realized what we are doing and what the lack of information we have at the moment. And I started to create a mix of happenings. So we have educational projects. I'm trying to build a lot of content around bringing awareness about climate change. At the moment, we have online workshops. And for example, last year, what we did was like workshops or kokedama. I sent in boxes all the needed materials to people to cook, to do a plant covered in moss, and a cooking workshop, a vegan cooking workshop, zero waste. I delivered everything, all the necessary ingredients in zero waste, like no plastic and or garbage. And we met online and we cooked together in the middle of pandemic, just to see that it's possible to cook vegan. It's okay to learn to cook vegan, and it's okay to cook zero waste. The zero waste movement in Romania is, in 2018, there were no zero waste shops nationwide. Okay, it was one in Oradea, which is like super far from Bucharest. But at the moment, I see a huge growth, and we have a lot of zero waste shops. So I'm like, supporting the movement from the community. Every time there's a new shop, or I'm like pushing it in my community. And I also, considering my background before this passion that became an NGO, I was very involved in the startup environment, and I also worked in a few corporations, but more startup. And I was very concerned about being an entrepreneur. And now I'm switching this perspective, like, okay, you want to be a change maker. What does it take to be an eco-entrepreneur? What are the tools you need to, what are the skills you need to develop? So as you see, I'm like 360 degrees because I understood that sustainability is a 360 business. It's everything that we do, like everything where we do. Even now, we're not sustainable, that we have this online conversation. And yeah, I was saying I have the first community. The first one is focused on sustainability topics. And the second one, which I started last year in the middle of pandemic, when everybody was stuck indoors, and I was like, yeah, but maybe we can help each other. And it's called Loc de Troc, which means barter place in English. I don't know how. I think troc is actually a French word. We exchange services and goods. For example, I have maybe a vacuum cleaner, but I need some, I don't know, coaching sessions. And the group is super active. It's almost like 10,000 members in 1 year. And it's like a super huge flow of exchanging things. There's no money involved. There's just exchange of goods and services. In order to finance my activities, because we all need some finance for our projects, I'm trying the best I can to avoid greenwashing. So I'm avoiding to write projects and go to a big corporation and be like, hey, fund me with 3,000 or 5,000 euros just to do this. So I came to the idea that I will continue to push on education. Maybe it's a softer greenwashing, because it's of course from a corporation that you sell trainings and courses. But at least I know that I'm not just taking money from a CSR department. At least I influence maybe 20, 30, 50 people, how many people attend a workshop. Even today I had a workshop with Michelin, and we discussed about sustainability. And it was a very in-depth workshop. It was the 30 people, the 200 were invited, 30 joined, 30 discussed. It was super engaging. So this is my business model behind the NGO. I sell trainings in companies just to fund my team. We are a small team at the moment. We are just 3 ladies. What we do with the money, for example, Collage Climatique is actually Fresque du Climat. It's a French game started by, maybe you know it because you are involved in this. sustainable environment. It's a game that has, at the core, it has the IPCC report, which means that it's a board game of you play it in 3 hours with cards. You have to correlate cards. It starts with human activities, and it's a cause and effect kind of game, and it goes through the whole IPCC report. And this was my #1 tool, also for companies, but also for the large community. Over summer, when we had almost no COVID restrictions, I played it a lot in pop-up festivals. It was very nice to see that we were invited to play this in all sorts of events. So this was my main awareness tool for speaking about climate change, because it's fun at the same time, and people love board games, and it's engaging, and it speaks about real facts, and the ahas that come from this are very, very important. Another thing I did in Bucharest this summer, I contacted an initiative from Oradea, again the city from where the first Zero Waste shop was. They did what they did was they went to coffee places and restaurants that have filtered tap water. So just so you know, in Romania we don't drink tap water. That means we have a lot of plastic bottles. So for Romanians, drinking tap water is like, oh, no way. You'd never get tap water in restaurants. You never get tap water, neither at home. People don't drink tap water. So we went to the places that have filters in Bucharest at their restaurants, and we created this map. If you can scan that QR code, for example, you'll see it opens in a map, and you see the locations in which you can go, with your reusable bottle and get free filtered, to put the accent on that, tap water. And it was really nice. It boomed in July. We did it during the July Plastic Free campaign. Maybe you know about it. July Plastic Free is an international campaign started in Australia, through which people are invited to avoid generating plastic throughout the whole month of July. So at this moment, we have 50 places, mostly center Bucharest, that are covering the area and from where you can get tap water. Another thing that I have started recently is apparently, through my communities. Last year, I tried to do some live videos, like one-on-one talks. I call them șuetă. It's like small talks around topics. And breaking down my imposter syndrome last year, I decided to, I saw that it had a really good engagement. And I was like, okay, I need to take this next level. So I took the concept of talking one-on-one to my guests, but now I have also invited a graphic facilitator to join the discussion. So this is the last talk we had last week last week, and I had next to me the global leader from Planet and now from Ashoka, if you know, how do you call it, the NGO. It's a huge, the most important social anyways, so we discussed about climate change, but I tried, as you see, to discuss about climate change in a way that maybe it reaches also the ones who are not really interested in the subject, because I'm trying to not put pressure on people, even though we should be scared. Maybe I'm trying to, come with a softer approach. Like you need to understand you do good for yourself rather to understand you do good for the planet. I also always say that planet will anyways regenerate itself. It's us we are saving. So then because of all these initiatives, I also got a lot of media coverage. Even recently, I was a bit overwhelmed with this, under the radar kind of thing. But it's good to see that people start to respond to all my creative ideas. Pretty much I'm generating crazy ideas. I put them there, I test them, see if they work. If they work, I continue, as you saw with the talks or if they don't, I drop them. So as I said, at the moment, it's just me that funded this community. And I also have a content writer, and I have developed a network of trainers, which on which I can rely to deliver the trainings that we are promising to companies. And yeah, that's about me. Thank you. I hope I was on time. Questions, please.
Thank you, Roxana.
You're welcome.
That was really interesting, and definitely nice seeing like the variety of projects that you're actually organizing. It's quite a diverse portfolio you have there.
Yeah, I'm trying. I'm just hoping one way or another people resonate with the idea of being interested in discussing about climate change and being and becoming sorry, I lost my words. After 2 trainings today, I told you after the one at Michelin, I'm like, I had a nap before this talk because I was knackered. So yeah, that's my mission, to reach people through the messages, and that's why I created the mix. It's a lot of things happening, and I have more things coming in the next period. You will see probably, Diana. And yeah, let's hope this brings the change we all need, because climate education is not something that's in Romanians' mind at the moment. I've been involved in French communities, and I'm involved in the French community in Romania, and French people speak about climate like English people speak about weather, So it's very interesting to see, sorry for the parentheses, but it's very interesting to see your initiatives, and it's very inspiring to be together with you tonight. So thank you.
Thank you. Cool. Well, hopefully we'll get to some of those topics in the discussion at the end. I'm going to introduce our final speaker, Etienne from Yapluska. So Yapluska, it's a collective that brings together architects and planners and artists and designers, really a really good mix of professionals to share basically knowledge and skills in order to develop really innovative urban and architectural projects. They do have a particular focus more so on the intangible dimensions, so like cultural and anthropological, that they produce throughout the city in terms of the everyday life. And they do invest quite a lot in public space as a support for action and as an object for reflection. So there is their focus. I'm going to invite Etienne to share his screen, if that's all right. If not, I can share the presentation. Let me know. Yeah, great.
Is it okay?
It's perfect.
The presentation? Yes, okay. So thanks for the invitation on all of this presentation. Very interesting. So it's interesting to see that we are all connecting in French. We know La Preuve par 7 and a lot of initiators of La Preuve par 7 was an example for us, because I'm younger than Doina, but they begin to ask some questions that we explore with other maybe young architect and collective. So I just share our experience as collective of architect, urbanism, and designer. So, Yapluska, as I said, is a collective. We are architect, designer, and urbanist. So we develop a lot of projects between architecture and urbanism. We talk about intermediary urbanism because we try to work on the city between people, between inhabitants and politics, between the scale of project. We try to think about how we can manage the project between the daily life of inhabitants and the long-term project for urban renovation, for example. And we have some project of architecture when we try to reuse material, and we try to make design differently for example, we work with people in order to design, and we organize some workshop and etc. But it's not the subject here. Here, I propose to share my reflection about your subject, your matter, and about discussion of ecological transition and how we can advance with people about this subject. When we talk about transition, for me today, it's something like a garbage word, you know. Everyone have his own transition, and I think that transition now is more present in media than, for example, sustainable development, because with transition we have the idea that the changement could be smooth, you know, no disruption, no revolution. So we have to take care about this semantic question. But when we talk about transition, we have several ways, several proposals of solution. There is this idea of sustainable development. On the left, we continue in the same way, but we try to make green industry and to consume differently and etc., etc. So there is another movement that talk about decreasing the system. Maybe it's more the resilience, to say how we can use less material, how we can produce differently, and maybe to slow down in each level of the society. And the last way is the idea of circular economy, and to say, okay, we can produce here, we have garbage, so we reuse this, and something like a virtual cycle. But I don't know the good ways, but I'm sure that we have to talk about what is the sustainability. And if we take the 3 pillars of sustainability, it's the ecology, the social, and the economical aspect. So it's how is defined sustainable development by the ONU. And some people, some NGO and state and cities defend the idea that we need a 4th pillar. It's the cultural dimension of the transition and the collective transformation. So we try to use this pillar and work on this pillar by pedagogy, by transmission. And I think that we have to transform the way of making, the way of thinking cities for architects, for politicians, also for inhabitants. So we have more to work on practice and collective action than on the tools, and in a more we need to work on a global scale about how we can make, etc. But we feel that we have to work with the local and this idea. How can I say? We have to transform our tools as an architect, our strategy as urbanists, and imagine new form, new design. And we try to do it in our work. And you ask how we can disseminate action, how we can imagine collective methodology, or what are the tools for transformation and diffuse this new way of making. I think that is really complex to share some tools, because in fact each situation is different, and even in France it's totally different to work in suburbs of Paris, in a local village. So I'm not sure. We can debate about that with other example, but I think that we have to go from the place, and the place is not the space. We talk about lieu in France, it's place, and we have to work on the place. The place is the good scale for transformation and for disseminate this new way of thinking collectively. And I just what define a place, it's identitary space. So we have a community that make a place. We have relation with people, and we are into history, and we have to work with the reality that were before us here. So I prefer to talk about placemakers when I explain what we do. That's architect, because in general architect design and just come back a few times on the space of building, and that's all. So I imagine our work more like placemaker. We are in the place where we work every day, and I take this example. So, and we are on site when we work. It's some example here. Every time we make a place or several places, we are very nearly this idea of permanence architecturale of la preuve par set. But we make this differently. We work on public space, so we try to be into public space in order to engage a process, in order to make common place. I just take an example because I think it's important to talk about a real situation. I talk about Bagnolet. It's a city near Paris, into the suburb, just close to Paris. And we are in this city since 6 or 7 years. And in 7 years, we make a lot of little projects into the city. We arrive into a space, a big area that know a lot of big urban transformation, urban renovation, because in French it's very specific. You know, this typical area of big building for housing, and with all the modernist thinking of public space. And we arrived here 7 years ago. And the city give us a local, a little space into this area. And we said, okay, we come and we just give time to the city, and we will see what we do with people. We don't have a previous program or something new for the years that coming. So we just begin to work with people, to build with the kids, and to take woods, to take tools, and to make some play tools. We make some workshop, for example, with women, in order to learn how you can make something into your home and how you can repair something. The idea is to invite people to think that they can make something by themselves, and they can make reparation, they can reuse some product and materials. And we make all this little daily action, and with the month we begin to make more bigger projects. And for example, we work with social center of the city in order to improve the common space of the social center. So we organize some workshop with the young people of the area and with inhabitants, and we try to explain how we can make architecture differently and how we can make architecture together. And after that, we invite people to work with us. And this time of collective making, it's really important, because it's here that you talk about plan, that you talk about other way of consumption or of make together. So I put a lot of pictures because I know that my English is not really very well. So it's the result. And in another area, we make the cyclo. In fact, in a lot of areas, Bagnolet is a really poor city, and there is a a lot of lack of services, of building equipment, etc. And here a group of inhabitants want to have a place in order to make preparation for bike, and there is any space. So with actors of the cities, we identify a space, and we help this community of inhabitants to build a little workspace into this public space. So, for example, this project is a good example because we work with inhabitants, we work with the cities in order to identify the good place and the resources, and we help people to find the good model of organization, and we make the intermediary between the cities for authorization and things like that, and we make co-conception with people. So it's the result. And as I said, we live into the space, so it's really important just to be there when people are together. And when the city make an event, we are there and we talk about what we do, and we just give some tools to people in order to organize things. Another example here, it's in the area where we are, and you have a lot of big space like this, you know, it's the shitty space of the modernity, and we work with people in order to reinvestigate the space, to have a reappropriation, and we use our tools of architect and designer in order to propose some project. But in general, the final project is not the project that we imagine at the beginning, but the pictures is a good way to explain to political or inhabitant that you want to do something. So it was the project of the beginning, but we begin to make some gardening with people of the area, and we make some little construction, and today we have a huge garden and people can come. It's a shared garden, a typical shared garden, but it's an example of how we investigate a space with a community, and we make a garden. And today, since many years, there is a lot of workshop into the garden in order to just make gardening and learn something about plant or things like that. And after many years, we find the good program to implement into the city. We make a third space. In France, we talk a lot about third space today, but in fact, it's a workshop for people, for inhabitants, for associations that want to co-design and co-build something. So everyone can come here, take a coffee, or find a designer or tools, and he can take these tools in order to make preparation and something into his home, or he can discuss with the designer in order to imagine something like a furniture. But we work also with association, or for example, with how we say this in English, with, you know, association that work with young people that live in the street or leave the school. So we work a lot with this type of structure, and we open the space every day. And on these pictures on the right, you see there is 2 entrances of garage. Today we have one of this, and we make a ressourcery, a space where people can take some materials, piece of wood, piece of metal, in order to make project. And it's the same for association. So this place is more a place of transmission, of meeting for people that want to make the city differently. And they know that they can find someone here. And today there is a real daily life of this space for inhabitants, more for all the actors of transformation of the city. So you can find tools, and here it's some example of workshop that we do in this space. And for example, people come to Hyper, and here we work together in order to design for example, here another shared garden. So you have people that have a place and they don't know how they can build something in order to put the tools, to have a space for cooking together. And we are here, we say, okay, what materials you have, what money you have, and how many people you are, and we work together in order to make the project. And a last example, in order to show how we can work with the city, with policies, and as this space between inhabitants and public service and policies. Here it's a grocery, and it was, in fact, we are, I said, in a big area in urban renovation. So you have some buildings that are destroyed, others are built, and in general, they close a part of the space during the transformation. And we have a problem in Tous-les-Malassis, it's the name of the area. During many years, you have any shop into the area. So people ask to have something, and we say, okay, we will work with the city about that. And in fact, we work with the city in order to put this new temporary grocery. It's a mobile grocery made with container, but we don't just design the building, we work with the city. And for example, we discuss with the old grocery of the area, and now he manage this space, and you have a continuity of the actors like this. And we discuss with them and people, and we see that there is anything when you can take away some food into this area. And he comes from Pakistan, and he have this idea of make a takeaway cooking. So we said, okay, we make a professional cook space, professional kitchen into this this little mobile building, but you have to give this space during the weekend to the association that want to make cook for his own project. And the building today, the city is the owner of the building, and we help the dialogue and to write the good administrative tools in order to manage this different. It's not a public equipment, it's not totally private. So what's the statute of this? So other example, we work a lot on public space with people, and the space of Les Malassis. There is a huge space in front of 3 public institutions. There is a swimming pool, there is a social center, there is a place for music, but you have anything on this area. So we work with the social center and with inhabitants, and each year we make several workshops in order to garden, in order to build some furniture. And after 5 years of this process, we see a lot of young people, we see a lot of inhabitants, and what you give is it's with this long-term work. I think it's really important to think about the long term. Yes, it's just little furniture with palette. It seems to be very little, but in fact, with the time, you impulse new dynamic. You share a new way of thinking how you can manage your own common space, not only a public space. So here it was a year, here it's another year. This space, the dial is totally fucked up, and you have a lot of water when it rains, and there is any bench. So we work with people to say, okay, where is the priority? And they build with it's not our idea to do that. We find the good problem with people and we imagine solution together. It's another example of little furniture. It was a few weeks ago. So just for finish, I would like to say that maybe the most important thing is to share our project and experience. It seems to be the question of Atelier. We can see a lot of initiative everywhere. For example, in France, there is a lot of network about transition, about action, and it's really interesting. It's really interesting to share, but I think that it's really difficult to just give our tools or methodology of work, because in fact, each situation is totally different. You don't have the same political guys, you don't have the same monies, you don't have the same dynamic of territory. And in fact, it's really hard to say how you can make in another place. And you know, for example, I showed this project when we are improv as association, but our association work for other cities or for housing, public housing companies or things like that, and we try to share our way of making, but in general we say, okay, we just have to experiment, and we go into public space and we build with people and we say, okay, what happened now? And it's more a way in order to show that you can make something by your end, but you can discuss together. And it's more this way of making, of building and be there. It's more a pretext for debate, discussion, provocate other situation of collective thinking, but there is no solution and or good package to share. So I'm really sorry. I know that my English is not really good, but I hope that you understand things, and I prefer to give time if you have some question or you want more precision or about something.
Brilliant. Thank you, Etienne. I think like this was a good one to like close with a bit of a bigger picture view of what we've been talking about. Vera, shall I pass it on to you in terms of the discussion now? We have about half an hour left, so really trying to make most of our time from the speakers we have, as well as...
Yes, it's discussion time, finally. I just want to say thank you to Juana and Roxana and Etienne and Emilie, because they brought to the table a lot of energy and hope besides knowledge, and their examples are inspiring examples. And yes, it's true that each situation is different, but I think that through meetings like this one, we get to the core of the common principles and values that can bring us to common ambitions and expectations. And once we have that, I guess that maybe the local situations can be, you know, discussed and analyzed. But as long as you have like a common frame for what you want to do in your place, I think it's very important to have this common understanding of what ecological transition is. And I thank you very much for the schemes in the presentation of Etienne. I think you took us from these conceptual drawings to very concrete examples of you know, like objects, designed objects in space that can make the space a place. So we thank you very much to all of you. And I just want you to know that even though maybe it's not very well represented here tonight, there is in Romania young professionals who are willing to engage with community groups. And I've seen them, so I know what I'm talking about. And the proof is also the Biennale in Timișoara on the topic of responsibility. And there is support from the professional organization, the Order of Architects, both the Bucharest branch, but also the National Order of Architects, is supporting these explorations for a different way of being architects, like placemakers, and working together with local communities. So I'm an optimistic person, and I see signs of people who are willing to do more. We have prepared a set of questions. What we have been thinking, derived from the answers of the survey that was made during this small project that we are closing now with this event. And many of the concerns of the people who answered this survey were related to how to bring even more people to this online platform, and how to reach to new network members. And I consider that tonight we had the presentation from Oana and from Roxana, and we saw how skilled they are in both advocacy campaigns and trainings and communication. So maybe I would bring especially to them this question on how they consider that possibilities of bringing more members to this network could be done. So now we switch from presentators to panel members.
So if you,
and of course, everyone in this meeting could jump up with some answers to the questions that you can see on the screen.
Can I answer first?
Yes, Oana, please.
Okay. I'm gonna say a bit about how our work is done, and what are our basics in a campaign. And this refers to, we start from the data. We identify the problems, and we try to confirm those problems and those needs with citizens. We always talk to citizens in all of our campaigns, and all the steps of when we want to change a law, or when we want to have a new public law, we always try to talk to citizens. Then we always create very clear messages that are reasonable, and we don't like to panic people. We don't do that, and maybe this is one of our advantages on the communication on these issues, on these environmental issues. We try to look at the data and stay with the data, never go across panic lines, I don't know, make people very scared or something like that. So I noted some stuff here. We have a very good relationship with authorities, and we do that by identifying people within these authorities that are willing to help, because there are people that are willing to help and are willing to work on issues. We always try to build these bridges, and if we cannot, then we go to the next authority, or maybe find someone else that does the same thing in another part of the city, or stuff like that. So I don't know what else to say about this.
So you would speak about how to get the interest from public decision makers is to go to the person and try to have trust building with that person.
We've discovered that some people are really interested in helping, and maybe they are not listened to by anyone in the I don't know, in the municipality or where he or she works, and they are very open to talking to some.
So you are talking more about the public servants than about the elected officials.
With the politicians is harder, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I add a question about this in terms of, because with the elected politicians, for example, and this I'm speaking about this from experience. You have a sort of cyclical relation, yeah. So they are elected for a limited period of time, and then there are others that are coming and replacing them. Sometimes, I mean, it is the case in France and certainly in Romania also. Those that are coming are destroying what those that were before have built, and usually also they are destroying also the networks and the kind of relations that have been built in time. And I'm just curious how you deal with this, or if you have a strategy about this. And I'm also asking my French colleagues. I know that sometimes you need to have incredible negotiator skills like Patrick Duchamp, for example, that kind of overcome these political cycles and speak also at the very top of the power structure. But also it's interesting to see K also that are engaged with one municipality for long term, and despite, or probably there some political I don't know, continuity or resilience that might be interesting to question. And I don't know in Romania how you deal with this.
It's the same situation here on every issue as you described it. We usually stay with the data and use media. When you don't have any other solutions with the politicians, you go to the media, you start a new campaign, a new topic, and then they listen because they have to. So this is how we do it. It's the only way.
So by constraint, you are constraining them to listen.
Yes, because I know exactly
whatever is their kind of political ideology.
I doubt more and more that there is one at the moment in our country. It's really such an open fight for power without any concern for political ideology. And you don't find in any party people who would go on the stage on TV or somewhere and talk about climate change in Romania. It's really like Oana has mentioned earlier, it's really as if nothing happens.
It's a non-issue. Yeah. And when you say something about climate change or what we have to do or the policies at the European level or what do we have to comply with, they are always concerned that this is a very crazy wave that, and we have to develop
the conspiracy.
And and first of all, Romania has to develop to be a strong economy, I don't know, country. and no, so nobody cares in any way, or any policy making, if you want, in agriculture, in energy, in everything is the same. So.
And we have Madame Dăncilă at BNR, no, for sustainability, or she has like this kind of position now. She's a very controversial political public figure for the French.
Yes, let's not go to complaining. I started it and I'm sorry for it. But now if we can go to one last question that was addressed to Etienne, I think it's very important also for this question in terms of professional engagement. How, at the end of the day, you form these collectives? How does it work? And then when a collective is formed, like Oana is asking here, is what would be the 3 most important points you need to develop a community project?
So when I talk about collective, it's in fact there is several collectives. There is the collective Iapluca, and the experience of Iapluca as collective permit to, how can I say, help people to engage collective project. So like in Bagnolet. And with your question, what is the 3 most important points you need to develop a community project? I can try to give an answer. I think that the first thing, it's a common problem, a common need. You know, an empty place, you need an equipment, a common problem, you know, to an area, and something that can put people together. And after that, you need to have the desire to make together, and the desire is something that you, how can I say, that you manage. You know, you need to have good time together, to show people that it's a cool dynamic, a cool place, in order that more and more inhabitants come and take part to the project. And if I connect to the question, to the intervention of Doina, we work in a really complex equilibrium between the street credibility, you know, the legitimacy that you have because you are into a place, and the discussion with the political responsible and the public institution in order to have money and just to have right to do what you do. And it's a really complex exercise, and I think it's very specific to each country, because we see the difference between 2 cities in France. So I don't imagine with Romania, but you know, there is this common, in fact, sorry, I make another connection, but I think it's really important. You know, today we talk a lot about common and more about common than public. Common, it's a concept, but it helps to understand how you can engage a collective project. You need to take care of something together, you know, your city, a space, so it's connected to this question of a collective problem. I don't know, the school of your children, the place where you can come together, the need of a common place in order to make something, I don't know, a sport or something like that. And people are together around this project, and you say, okay, guys, the city is not totally with us. They don't take care of things. So how we can do this together? And I think that you have to find the good dynamic, and sometimes it's really hard. I think that Doina can talk about a lot of projects where it's really hard to keep a collective dynamic. So I think that you need to have a common desire and a common interest into something, and you need to talk about that. I talk about some, it's really complicated with for example, with the question of air pollution, because it's not a place, it's something that is everywhere. And it's really hard to to engage people on this fight. You see what I mean? It's the same problem that we have all over the world. In fact, everyone say, okay, it's a big crisis, how we can do with it, and nothing is changing. So we have to take as a beginning point the place, the local place, and it's the multiplicity of other experience. I think that we are all connected by not political common discourse, but with the idea that we need a better world for tomorrow, you know, for our children. And I think that our problematic is totally different in France than in Romania. So I don't know if you see what I want to say, but
I know that there are differences in details, but this issue of having some people who are willing to be in between street legitimacy and public institutions, that's a need to have anywhere translators and facilitators and people who get the trust of both decision makers, public servants, élus, elected officials, and on the community groups and inhabitants and especially vulnerable groups. Emily, you want to add something? Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yes.
I guess I wanted to add maybe more on the topic of how the Prof said. I think part of what we're trying to really put in place is a project that's carried even more locally. So I guess the question of also like thinking through how we deal with political cycles is also knowing that political cycles are inevitable. And so the project should not depend simply on a political cycle. And so sort of to what Etienne is saying, that there should be sort of a common theme or object to what we're aiming for, but that it's created by sort of a group of actors that include the political aspects of the town, but not only, and that for the most part, it's a series of different actors that are on the ground. And part of what I find really effective in one of our projects in Bagneux is specifically that we have a sort of we have a convention, we have a contract with the town that sort of keeps us anchored on the ground, while also we're creating relationships that would allow us to go beyond what the town could provide for us necessarily. And so I kind of understand this idea of the delicate balance, but also to the comment that was in the chat about the role of the architect or the urban planner coming in as not necessarily the determiner, but more as a facilitator for discussions, as somebody who can bring in things, who can offer a certain skill set, but not necessarily being the center of how these operations are functioning, because we know that there are other people who have other skill sets that are almost as essential, if not more. So it was just to add to that and sort of situate where the Prof set sort of comes with that as we're evolving between architecture and urban planning concepts, both on buildings and in public space. So
thank you, Emily. Silvio, you placed a very interesting note on the chat. Can you please be part of the discussion, or do you want me to read it? Because I guess okay, some of us are architects and some of us are not, but we like to think because we have this power of imagining how a place could look like. This is an incredible power, and sometimes we get seduced by this power and we imagine that by drawing it, yes, we can convince many people to follow on our vision. So basically what Sylvie is asking me is to read. So I want to observe that, in my opinion, the changing of terminology is very powerful, and we should be very careful in proposing changes. I'm not agreeing in changing the architect word into placemaker, since the latter seems more adapted to neoliberalist logic of making place for gentrification. We should change the perception of what the architect is expected to do for society and the planet. So
I can answer.
Yes, please.
So, to be honest, every time when you are architect and you talk about what you do into the suburb, we say, okay, you are an actor of this gentrification, but guys, come into this area and I can show you that we are not making gentrification, we just try to improve the situation. And I'm not responsible of gentrification. For me, it's a systemic problem. For example, I'm architect. Before I live in Paris, and I come and live in Bagnolet because it's cheapest, but I'm not responsible of gentrification. I'm an actor, but I'm an actor as architect, and I prefer to walk into the city where I live and to take part of the community of this city, and not just be an architect that live in Bagnolet, work in Paris, go into the bar in Paris, etc. So for me, we have to take care about this very simple critique of how this new practitioner and the collective that go into suburbs and rural space, because it's the same problem in the rural area. Today, a lot of architects go live into the countryside and help to develop countryside. So it's a gentrification of countryside. In France today, it's what is coming with the post-COVID. And about the words, I'm totally disagree. For example, this concept of common, in my mind, and maybe other people can talk about that, I'm not alone, but I think that someone use other concepts, use other notion is not the goal is not to build a new system of thinking, is more to say, okay, in fact, we talk and think with this idea of public space and the public since many years, and the arrival of this concept of common share and take a lot of idea about how we can manage together, how we can take decision together, how we can make politics together. So in my mind, it's important to imagine new words, new concept, and this idea of placemaker in a way of to say, okay, we have to think place and no space, and we have to make, not just discuss or design. And so it's an answer, but I think that other people can give their
We can spend the whole night debating on that.
It's true.
Okay.
You have to come in Romania and for talking about that.
I think it's very much linked. One of the questions we have on the screen is about the role of the urban professionals in the local green movement. And that's what Sylvie is also mentioning about the reflection on what the architect could do for society and the planet. Expected to do, I don't know. But I guess that more and more architects are expecting more from themselves. And that would be good news. Yes, Doina, thank you.
Yes, well, I would come back also to some important statement that Emily has made in relation with what she described as one of the important methods of La Parcette, which is this permanence architecturale, speaking about the role of professionals, the fact of being there long term, and doing, slow decision making, which is somehow a paradox, because this is normally more costly, and also somehow with climate change we do not have time. So we have to act rapidly. So how these two things go together, and how one can resource this kind of long-term involvement. Perhaps also in the context of Romania, where there is not so much public funding, yeah, as it is in France. I imagine that this permanence, this kind of long-term involvement is somehow funded through kind of municipal, regional, governmental funding. So yeah, this is a question that I'm throwing that I think it relates also with the following question, which is displayed there on the screen.
Oh, well, yes, Emily.
No, I would say I think it's a constant, just to sort of echo what Doina is saying. I think even we don't think it's a model that can always be perfectly reproduced. It's a difficult model. I think we have a sort of exceptional situation because also the French system permits so much funding. And part of what we're trying to phase right now is thinking, okay, well, we have this funding, but what does the project look like afterwards? And so I would invite you all to sort of follow the project as it develops, because we are thinking through these questions of its permanence beyond state funding and how a local sustainable network of infrastructure can be created. I mean, it's not just about physical infrastructure, it's also about knowledge infrastructure, which I think which is also what we're talking about here. And part of this ecological transition that we're pointing to is thinking about knowledge infrastructure and how we are able to mobilize it and use it to make changes that can go up to policy level at times, but also can make significant changes to the everyday lives of people who need physical access to things, which sometimes is not existing in certain towns because of lack of access. And there is a possibility to make that happen locally. And so it is that constant mix. So it's just to echo that it's an imperfect attempt to make things a bit better.
Maybe this would lead us to the last question here in terms of funding models that could be used by actors of the environmental movement. I can see that a lot of public funding is not good either, although we very much hope for more here in Romania in order to start some examples, some demonstrations to bring them closer to many communities. But what we had from Little Joys was the way that Roxana has matched resources from the private sector, and she underlined the fact that she doesn't want to hear about greenwashing funding. So maybe Roxana, if you can add a bit to that. Thank you.
Yes, so sorry, I was a bit, I was for 1 minute away from the discussion because I had an emergency, but yeah, I'm trying as much as possible to avoid greenwashing. But, you know, in the end, any collaboration with any private entity, everybody pollutes, yeah? So it's idealistic to say that I'm not doing any greenwashing at all. Imagine today I had in Michelin, okay, I did some trainings, but tires pollute. Now we know it's a huge industry that pollutes a lot, yeah? So there's no difference in the end. It's just maybe I go to sleep a bit more happier that I just didn't simply just take some money and plugged in a project. I actually, you know, try to change the mentality of 40 people I was involved in the discussion. So for me, I think greenwash, there's a lot of greenwashing. It's at political level now. Everybody's playing the green agenda. Well, in some places. So there's a lot of greenwashing. It's a lot. We had now COP26 as well, and you know, you saw that nothing happened pretty much. Everybody flew their biplane, had 2 weeks of yeah, discussions and things are shaky. But yeah, for me, this was the quickest way I could approach trying to get money. What I also did, and I did not mention, is that just to get me started last year, before I funded an NGO, I did a Patreon campaign. Considering the fact that I have a huge community behind, yeah, I try to get my my community to fund me, so peer-to-peer funding, let's say. And it helped me to get started. I didn't put too much effort in this direction, as I got dragged in, you know, building up this NGO, this business. But I think one key would be to offer the entire community the information they need and the tools they need to be part of this change. And at the same time, they should fund me. I mean, for me, this is the idealistic way of how I see Micile Bucurii functioning. So I hope I get to the point where the community finds what they get from Micile Bucurii valuable enough so that they can maybe pay, I don't know, 3-5 euros a month to fund my projects. That would be ideal. And as you know, in Romania, what we have that redirecționarea impozitului.
Tax waiving if you finance NGOs.
Yeah, so when you have a salary, yes, and part of the taxes you pay to the state, 3.5% of that can go to NGOs, and it's a whole campaign NGOs do in the month of May, when people can redirect this tax. And I think that's one of the things I haven't explored. Imagine I just had the NGO at the last year in December, and what I did for this May was very, very little effort, but people tend to, you know, it's easier to redirect some money from the state rather than paying a monthly fee via Patreon towards me. It's just redirecting money. And yeah, I hope this was the question, because sorry, I told you I was a bit unplugged. Sorry.
I want to pass the mic to if he's still with us. So I saw something happening on the chat during our evening, which was that Andrei from Euroland Banat Association was asking questions to Emily about what kind of rehabilitation for vernacular architecture, and if you would like to add some information on this case study that could become in a very short time, like next year, this time we can talk about a good practice here, maybe, I hope. So Andrei, the mic is yours.
Thank you very much, Vera. Thank you very much to the ATU team for having us here. We are an NGO from the far western side of Romania. We are from Reșița, from the Banat region. And after 7 years, we managed to convince the local administration not to bring the bulldozers and to put an old heritage building down. And instead, we started searching for funding, and we managed to submit together with the City Hall a project, and we got funded from Norway, Iceland, and Liechtenstein funds. And we are trying to revive an old school from the late 19th century called Pitnerschule. And hopefully at the end of 2023, we'll have the building restored and transformed into a cultural center. If I can share my screen, I have a short movie with the school. you will see okay, thank you. Now I can see you stop the
Yes.
share the shared screen, and I'll try to share it. Please let me know if you see the shared screen.
Yep.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
Is it okay?
Yes.
So this is the state of the building right now. We managed to clean it. And the city hall put a cover on the roof where the pieces were missing. I'll stop this one and I'll show you another one.
And it's in the ownership of the municipality.
Of the municipality,
Okay.
that's why we had to submit the project together with the city hall, because it's their ownership.
That's one example of an NGO that went to the municipality and they worked together to attract funding for this project, right?
Yeah, that's a very nice way to put it. For
This
for
is
7
what
years.
I see here.
Yeah. Yeah, we were pretty insisting on having the building saved. This is the old part of Reșița. Reșița is an industrial city. We are celebrating 250 years of steel industry. So it's the oldest industrial town in present Romania. This is the street. You see the furnace number 2 in the background, and the Pitner school just on the left-hand side with the chimneys. This is an old picture from the 30s. This is the oldest one that we have with the school. This is how the school looked when we saw that we have a heritage building that's starting to look a little awkward.
Andre, I have a question for you.
Go
I
ahead.
want to know about the programs and about the role of this building after rehabilitation, cultural center, what kind of public, and if you can think together. Of course, the building will be saved, and hooray to the Norwegian funding for that, yes?
Absolutely.
But then let's talk a bit about what we have been talking here, facilitating this connection, because once the building is repaired, what will happen inside? For whom? Who's going to pay the salaries for 2-3 people who would organize activities in this cultural center? You think, I mean, it's great that the building will be saved, but I guess that it is time already to start engaging with the potential public of the cultural center and discuss about details, because once the building is saved, you still need to, address the brief for the design and decide where the toilets will be, or the entrance, how large the main hall, or whatever. So the refurbishment and the reuse of this building I guess it is to be, I mean, it's a great project for participatory design, from my opinion. Yes.
Well, yes, I totally agree with you. I think this is one of the main reasons we manage to be among the 9 projects that got funded in the autumn of 2020, because it's part of an old neighborhood in an old industrial city, and it represents what we said in the presentation. We said it's a beacon for the whole neighborhood, and we started organizing things in the area. It was a German neighborhood because of course the industrial town was built by German settlers, and not also German settlers, but French settlers, because we had settlers from Alsace and Lorraine, and we had settlers from Luxembourg. So the story is really complex, and it goes back to 250 years ago. And this whole neighborhood and was developed by a French-Austrian steel plant that emerged in the middle of 19th century in the Austrian Empire.
Great, all this history. What about the future?
Well, the future looks pretty good, because the community starts believing. For them, it was a really pain, because you can see how the school started becoming less and less attractive, and became a polluted area with people throwing things inside. And you can see in the I'll let the screen go.
So once this place will function as a cultural center, what you're saying is that it will be an anchor for the development of the whole neighborhood.
Yes,
Thank you very much. I just want to add that last week we were in Călăraș, and again a municipal building that was refurbished, and there are several people who get their salaries from the municipality. It's part of the municipal museum. That building is not the only building of the municipal museum, and the cultural programming of that cultural center in Călăraș was really impressive to me, with a lot of concern for what the local community needs. So thank you very much, Andrei. I hope that we will see next year the building refurbished, but also people who are using it and who are great for sharing with us this example. And it's very good to have, you know, in the making, in this, yes.
It's really in the making.
I can hardly wait to visit this place. Thank you.
We are looking forward to meeting you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank you once again. I think it was a very lovely evening we have spent together, and you will get a sort of a minute I mean, a sort of a short report on that on our meeting, and I really hope that we will meet again soon.